Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Danielle, aka Stitcherista here on YouTube, and today is Friday, June 9th. So, yesterday was Charlize's graduation. I was very glad to see her graduate. It was a long day, however. And when we got home at 5 o'clock, I unexpectedly wound up working until 10:30. Yeah, so, very long work day. I'm off work today, which I'm very thankful for. And thought I would do a whip and chat only because, and read a true crime story. Haven't done that in a couple weeks. Only because I haven't diamond painted since last Sunday's video. So, need to do some diamond painting. I did do a little bit of stitching the other night, not last night, the night before. Yes, Wednesday I did. And got a couple more letters done. Really liking that piece. So the next time I see you guys in person, I will, show you that. The two diamond painting kits that I have on order from Diamond Art Club, the Hannah Lynn Golden Poppy Fairy and Hannah Lynn's Spring to Life, Back to Life, something like that, where the girl's like laying down sideways and she's got really pretty wings. That one had come back in stock and I ordered it. Those should both be here on Tuesday. So those unboxings will be very cool. I'm looking forward to that. But we are going to read a true crime story today, and it is from the cold case book that I've been reading. And it is called Repertoire of Lies. Up until the age of 55, Jane Alexander had lived a life of domestic quietude. Born in San Francisco in 1922, Jane had attended Notre Dame High School and Lone Mountain College before joining the intelligence branch of the Navy during World War II. It was while in the service that she met her husband, Albert, a banker. The couple married in 1945 and would enjoy 32 happy years together, during which they raised 6 children. In 1968, the family set up home in a comfortable residence in San Anselmo. But just 9 years later, this golden age came to an abrupt end. Albert collapsed and died of a heart attack, leaving Jane a widow in her mid-50s. Oh my. My great-grandmother on my stepfather's side, same thing happened to her. Her husband died of a heart attack when she was just in her 50s. She lived out the rest of her life by herself. She was very faith-based and very church-oriented. She did a lot with her church. But she never had another partner. I do wish I was faith-based when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I would have loved to have sat and talked with her about that. Yeah, the church was her life after her husband died. Okay, so Albert had been Jane's soulmate. She took his death hard, descending into a deep depression that would hover over her like a dark cloud for the next 3 years. I get it. I mean, I don't get it. I've never lost a spouse, but I can sympathize and understand how you would feel like that. Then in 1980, an old family friend showed up on the scene. Tom O'Donnell was handsome and charismatic and well-traveled. He had a large circle of friends, and he was an excellent raconteur. What the hell does that mean? Let me say, what's that word mean? A person who tells anecdotes in a skillful and amusing way. So a good storyteller. Okay. I don't even think I pronounced it right. Raconteur. It, on the Kindle app, what's so awesome is the app on my iPad. That's where I read my books. If you put your finger on a word, the dictionary pops up and tells you the definition. Okay. Tom's travels had frequently taken him off the beaten track. His favorite after-dinner stories had to do with his many close calls in politically unstable third world countries. The way Tom told it made him sound like a latter-day James Bond. Jane found herself falling for him, and in just a few months they had started dating. Soon he had moved into her San Anselmo home. Jane had never imagined that she could be happy again after Albert's death. The next 3 years would prove her wrong. Then in October 1983, another tragedy. Jane's beloved aunt, Gertrude McCabe, was murdered in her home in San Jose. Not just murdered, savaged. The frail 88-year-old had been bludgeoned with a blunt instrument, stabbed 27 times. Get the hell out of here. Throttled, suffocated with a pillow. Finally, the killer had twisted a bicycle lock chain around her slim throat and choked her to death. What the? What? What? See, in my opinion, from all the true crime stories I've read, when you have a murder that's committed like that, someone hated that woman, because that is a brutal, brutal thing to do to someone. Okay. This was an incredibly callous murder perpetrated against a tiny, defenseless woman who barely topped 5 foot and weighed just 97 pounds. Jesus. Wow. Wow. Who would commit such a terrible crime, and why? Initially, the police believed that this was a robbery gone wrong. Obviously, it's not going to be. The McCabe residence had been ransacked, with drawers pulled out and clothes strewn about the place. But as detectives dug a little deeper, they quickly realized that this was no burglary. There were valuable items in the house, jewelry left on a countertop, cash in the dead woman's purse. None of it had been taken. The only thing missing was the registry for Gertrude's checkbook, which she usually kept in a bedside drawer. Why would you take someone's checkbook register? What the hell does that mean? I guess we're going to find out. So, this wasn't a burglary after all, but a poorly executed attempt to emulate one. That pointed to a killer who was known to the victim and gave the police another question to ponder. Who benefited from Gertrude McCabe's death? The answer to that question was easy. The main benefactor of Gertrude's estate was her niece, Jane Alexander. Oi, don't even tell me Tom killed her aunt. Please don't tell me that. Was it possible that Jane Alexander might be behind the killing of her beloved Aunt Gert? Jane, who had appeared so distraught and who had wept so bitterly on receiving the news. Unlikely as that seemed, a look into Jane Alexander's finances suggested a powerful motive. Jane was broke, having blown through a small fortune over the prior 3 years. Recently, she had taken out a $200,000 second mortgage on her house, and it was unclear how she was going to service that debt. Her checking account was all but empty. All of this made Jane Alexander a strong suspect. Still, investigators were all but certain that it wasn't she who had wielded the blade or the bludgeon or the bicycle chain. Women seldom kill in such a brutal fashion. Seldom, but it does happen. The signs pointed to a male perpetrator. If Jane Alexander was indeed involved, then she had recruited someone else to do the killing for her, and that someone was likely to be Tom O'Donnell. We know the top 2 reasons for killing someone. Number 1 is money. Money, honey. Number 2, love. Yeah, money, honey, though, number 1. Over the year that followed, investigators continued to monitor their prime suspects. They believed they had cracked their case and were just waiting for Alexander and O'Donnell to slip up and give them the evidence they needed for an arrest. Before that moment arrived, however, Tom O'Donnell was gone. He slipped away on the night of June 7th, 1984, leaving Jane a 12-page letter. In it, he explained that some old business partners had tracked him down and were seeking revenge for a shady diamond deal gone wrong. His life was in danger, he said, and hers might be too if he stayed around her. He had therefore decided to go into hiding. Tom O'Donnell had always been a gifted liar. During the 3 years that he and Jane had been together, he had spun such an intricate web of lies that Jane was totally and utterly in the dark as to his true intentions. Now with Tom out of the picture and unable to maintain the charade, it all came crashing in on her. He had been playing her, leeching away her cash and assets, putting the money into dodgy business deals and surefire stock trades that inevitably tanked. She was broke, her nest egg gone, her house heavily mortgaged. Tom O'Donnell had played her right until the end. On the day he disappeared, he had convinced her to hand over her last $10,000 to him. Oh my good night. Wow. It would be fair to ask how an adult woman, especially one of Jane Alexander's years, could have been so utterly duped. But you should remember that Jane had been married to a banker for over 3 decades. Albert had taken care of the finances, and Jane had been happy to leave such matters to him. When it came to money, she was a babe in the woods. Aside from that, she was in love with Tom O'Donnell and believed he loved her too, It had never crossed her mind that he might cheat her. But now Jane was riled, rightfully so, determined to track O'Donnell down and haul him before the courts to answer for his misdeeds. That determination only increased when she received a second letter from him 5 months after he went missing. O'Donnell was spinning his lies again, telling her that he had made peace with his former business partners and was now working for them. The fuck? Jane didn't believe a word of it. She started calling around to her former lover's friends. They were less than forthcoming, but Jane could read between the lines and eventually determined that Tom was in San Jose. She passed on what she knew to the police, and they did the rest. O'Donnell was arrested at the home of his latest victim, a wealthy widow who he had drawn in with his usual repertoire of lies. Hence the title of this story. Have you guys seen the movie A Perfect Murder with Gwyneth Paltrow, Michael Douglas? Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow are married. They're very rich. Michael Douglas is like this stockbroker sort. Gwyneth Paltrow is having an affair with this artist. And come to find out, he had, gotten into bed with different wealthy women. It was his thing. It was such a good movie. That is one movie that I have watched over and over and over. I absolutely love it. Okay. So Tom O'Donnell was eventually convicted on 4 counts of fraud and sentenced to 4 years in prison. It was justice of a kind, but it did nothing to alleviate his former girlfriend's financial plight. Jane was bankrupt, forced to sell her house and to find a job for the first time in her life. She ended up living in an unheated apartment and working as a receptionist in a retirement home. She also wasn't done yet with Tom O'Donnell. She was convinced now, as was the San Anselmo Police Department, that O'Donnell was responsible for the murder of Gertrude McCabe. Now she was determined to prove it. And so Jane Alexander took on a new persona, that of amateur sleuth. She began gathering up every piece of evidence she could, spending months digging through police reports and financial records. Finally, 2 important clues jumped out at her. The first had to do with a call that O'Donnell made to relatives in Montana on the day that Gertrude McCabe died. He had told them he would soon be able to repay the $10,000 he owed them. Jane's aunt had just died, he said, and she was about to receive a substantial inheritance. The problem was in the timing of this call. At the time it was made, Gertrude's body had not yet been discovered, you big freaking dummy. Wow. The second clue came from a conversation O'Donnell had with Jane's daughter-in-law, Rocky, soon after the murder. He had told her that Gertrude had been garroted. This was true, of course, but the information had never been made public. There was only one way that O'Donnell could have known, because if he did it. Dum-dum. People are so stupid, really. While Jane Alexander was unearthing these anomalies in the case, San Anselmo detectives made a breakthrough of their own. This one had to do with Gertrude's checkbook register, the only item missing from the crime scene. The police had believed at the time that the killer had taken it to determine how much Gertrude was worth. But the register would turn up a few weeks after the murder. Jane and Tom were going through the house finalizing Gertrude's affairs when Tom, quote unquote, found the missing register. He said that it had been in the bedside drawer where it was usually kept. Unfortunately for Tom, this did not tie in with the crime scene photographs. These showed the drawer in question pulled out with no sign of the missing register. The only way it could have ended up in the drawer was if Tom had placed it there. Again, he's striking out. Seriously dumb. This was powerful circumstantial evidence, yet there was still one major obstacle for investigators to overcome. Tom O'Donnell had a seemingly unbreakable alibi. On the day that Gertrude McCabe was killed, he had been out of town staying with a friend in Burbank. He had only returned to San Anselmo the following morning. That meant that he could not have committed the murder. Or did it? Dun dun dun, right? Checking the mileage O'Donnell had covered in his rental car, detectives discovered that he had done 669 miles that day. Wow, that's a lot of driving. Almost the exact distance of a round trip between Burbank and Gertrude McCabe's home in San Jose, so his alibi was blown. It was time for Tom O'Donnell to pay the piper. It had taken 9 years for the San Anselmo police, with the considerable help of Jane Alexander, to build its case against Tom O'Donnell. O'Donnell was taken into custody in Los Angeles on March 17, 1992, and charged with first-degree murder. Convicted on that charge, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. O'Donnell was eligible for parole in 2007, but was denied at that time, and he would not have another hearing because he died behind bars in 2010. For Jane Alexander, the arrest and conviction of her former boyfriend was the start of a whole new chapter of her life. After the trial, Jane co-founded Citizens Against Homicide with her friend Jan Miller. The group's goal is to provide support to the families of murder victims to help them keep up the pressure on the authorities in cold and unsolved cases and to keep killers behind bars once they are caught. In 2006, Jane Alexander received the Minerva Award honoring women who have achieved extraordinary things. She would continue her work until her death in December of 2008 at the age of 86. At that time, the organization she had founded was looking into nearly 500 unsolved homicides. Wow! What a turning point for that woman's life. Man, she had to go through some awful things to get to that point, but I guarantee you that she helped many, many families. That is an amazing end to that story. Okay. So did you guys enjoy that? Yeah, I'm still reading My Daughter's Boyfriend by Daniel Hurst. I hope to I'm 63% done, so I hope to finish that book in the next couple of days because I actually just got a book from the library by Lisa Jewell called Watching You, and I really want to read that one. I use the Libby app on my iPad, and it's connected to my library, and it's awesome. I love it that you can just, and any book you get, most of them, you can read through Amazon. You can get the Kindle version of the book. So that's what I do. I have a lot of samples on my iPad from different books that I had seen people talking about. Like I follow Reese Witherspoon's book club on Instagram, and they always, they have some pretty good choices. So when I see the pick, I'll usually go get the sample. But okay, I hope you guys have all had a good week and are having a good Friday. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.